Portland's street response team is finally off the ground to send to mental health and homeless calls. But 2 months in, and it turns out the team isn't responding to the street as much as we thought.
For those of us who live here in the neighborhood, we were surprised to learn about the low call volume. We see a lot of people who are in crisis on the streets who might need help.
And a lot of you have questions about Portland's new program that pays homeless people to pick up trash. Like, why do they get $20 an hour?
This is a hard job, and it requires skill and planning.
And let's talk vaccine mandates, because some Republicans in Washington are fighting to make sure people aren't forced to get the COVID shot. Here's the story. Little pitchy, dog. It's a big Simpsons anniversary. That's why we made you suffer through that right there. And this is like Simpsons Town, right? Matt Groening, who I thought was called Matt Groening until I moved to Portland, went to high school like right next door in Lincoln. So we'll get to that in just a minute. All right, but we got a lot to talk about tonight. All the ways to communicate with us at the bottom of the screen. Use that hashtag HeyDan on Twitter and use the email, thestory@kgw.com to talk to us throughout the show. Let us know what you think. In the meantime, let's get to work. This is the big story, and tonight we want to talk about what happened last Friday. A police officer shot and killed a man named Robert Delgado at Lents Park in southeast Portland. So we filed some public records requests because of this. We filed them with the city just this morning. We're looking for things like the police dispatch logs, the 911 calls, all the kind of stuff that police have that maybe they haven't shared with us just yet, but can kind of help us piece everything together. And this takes weeks. It'll take a while, sometimes months even, to get these requests filled. But just a couple of hours ago, we can tell you the Portland police did release some pretty major bits of evidence that are helping us at least understand a little bit more about what led up to this shooting. It includes a timeline of the police response, photos of a replica gun that police say Delgado had that day, and an 18-minute long audio of police dispatch logs. We have a breakdown of the timeline, all that different stuff. It's at kgw.com right now if you want to take a look. We're also going to have more on it at 6:30. But for now, let's take a little step back and let's answer a huge question that's been on the top of minds of a lot of people in this city. Like, why were only police officers sent to that call in the first place? And I say that because Portland just poured millions of dollars into this new program that kind of seems like it could have been a good alternative that day. 911 dispatchers have already said that this call, there was a weapon involved, all that sort of stuff, it wasn't the right fit for this unit. But it turns out there were a lot of calls that don't seem to be a right fit for this unit. Here's Maggie Vespa.
I live here. I live pretty close to the park. My daughter saw the memorial and she asked me what happened.
Southeast Portland's Lents neighborhood is tight-knit, and people here are grieving what happened Friday.
The community, I would say, is sad, confused, upset.
Those emotions, says Neighborhood Association Chair Sabina Erdis, have layers. First, there's the fatal police shooting itself. 46-year-old Robert Delgado, reportedly homeless and long afraid of police, is dead. Portland police said the officer who shot him believed he was armed. They now say it was a replica gun and released this photo. Some witnesses said they didn't see a gun at all. The investigation is ongoing. That's layer number one.
It was very jarring to hear of what happened.
Layer number two, some are asking why police were sent in the first place, especially when the city of Portland just poured $4.5 million into launching a new alternative. Its name, Portland Street Response.
We're anxious and just ready to get started.
KGW covered PSR's launch back in February. The program gives 911 operators the option of sending an EMT and a crisis counselor to calls involving mental health or addiction. For now, Portland Street Response is focused on the Lents neighborhood where Friday's shooting happened. Friday afternoon, police were blunt. 911 dispatchers were told Delgado was armed. That ruled out the option of sending Portland Street Response.
This would not have fit within the protocols to dispatch them.
That rationale would be simple enough, says Erdis, if Portland Street Response wasn't so often kept on the sidelines.
We were surprised to learn about the low call volume.
Last week, 2 2 days before that police shooting, the Willamette Week reported PSR was being vastly underutilized, with emergency dispatchers sending the teams to 1 or 2 calls a day. PSR staff told reporter Tess Risky they could handle 4 to 5 times that.
And what did you think of those numbers?
So I understand there to be a few different reasons behind the call volume. One of the first arguments, of course, is, this is a new program, so we're trying to roll things out slowly and do it right. But another thing I've heard is that there's a specific triage criteria that has to be met.
KGW confirmed that criteria with Portland's Bureau of Emergency Communications. In order for dispatchers to send Portland Street Response, the person in question has to, among other things, be possibly experiencing a mental health crisis, intoxicated, or on drugs. They have to be outside or in a public space. They can't have any weapons or be behaving violently, and they can't be obstructing traffic. Boeck told KGW dispatchers are forwarding every call that qualifies to Portland Street Response. And PSR told Risky they're responding to every call they get. No one seems to know why there are so few calls that qualify for this new program. KGW also reached out to City Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, who's overseeing PSR. She declined to comment in light of Friday's shooting. People in Lents telling Risky they're frustrated, especially knowing the money for Portland Street Response was cut from the Portland Police Bureau's budget.
The neighbors in that neighborhood have a lot of different opinions over the role of law enforcement versus alternative options. Some of them feel like police don't respond to them quickly.
Looking around her neighborhood, Erdis doesn't understand the lack of calls fit for Portland Street Response. Lents is hard hit by the housing crisis. There's a massive need. And even after hearing 911 callers said Delgado was armed, Erdis feels like PSR could have helped.
And it's just kind of hard to understand why the police response wasn't such where they could kind of de-escalate to the point where they could bring in street response to talk to that person. Why so quickly they resorted to shooting and killing.
Maggie Vespa, KGW News.
Now, there's another element to this Lents shooting story that I do want to mention. Craig mentioned it too, wrote me on Facebook and said, "Hey, Dan, regarding the officer-involved shooting, just get the body camera footage and, oh yeah." You see, we don't have body camera video because it doesn't exist. Portland is the only large city in the country where officers don't wear body cameras. Kyle Aboshi found this out during an investigation in February. Both the Police Bureau and the police union told him they want the cameras, but the city's telling us it just costs way too much. And some police reform advocates, like Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, she says body cameras don't really stop police use of force, so they're not really worth it. You can check out Kyle's story on KGW.com or on the KGW YouTube channel. All right, let's talk trash. We love talking about trash. It's one of our favorite topics here, and based on the amount of emails that we get from you every time we talk about the garbage piling up around this city, we know that, well, I wouldn't say you like it, but you like discussing it. Finally, we're hearing some concrete plans to try and clean this city up. We told you about them on Friday, and 2 of those plans involve hiring homeless people to pick up trash. The city of Portland already started this. It's a pilot program right now. They're paying $20 an hour. Multnomah County also wants to hire 100 homeless people to pick up trash starting this summer. Again, paying $20 an hour. And we got a lot of questions about that amount of money, like this one from Barry. Do you have to be homeless to pick up trash for $20 an hour? How do you prove you're homeless? 2 good questions. So first, yes, these jobs are only open to people who are homeless. The programs are hiring people referred to them by the nonprofits they work with, that the city works with right now, that already work with people who are homeless in this city. Now, as of that $20 an hour, yeah, that's a lot of money. It is much more than the minimum wage here in the metro area. But most of these people, they're only working a few hours a week. This isn't like a 40-hour-a-week job making $20 an hour. Here's what the director of the nonprofit behind the city's program has to say about that amount of money.
This work is an essential service, and as such, we feel that it needs to be remunerated, and that's something that we are very passionate about. It also helps create more pathways for formal employment in the waste and recycling sector. But I also wanted to note that this is a hard job, and it requires skill and planning. And when I have gone around with the crew, the intentionality of planning the routes and organizing the crew, picking up litter safely, communicating with people, building relationships is not easy, and it's something that we want to acknowledge that and continue to build this program in that way.
Nika sent me this question on Twitter. Hey Dan, I like this trash plan with the homeless people being paid. Great way to help them get back on their feet. My question is, without an address, how will these folks be paid? A prepaid card? How will they address payroll for that? And it's a good question. So with Portland's program, which again is already up and running, the city says the nonprofits that they're partnered with, they pay them. And that nonprofit will then pay the homeless people in cash money. Other cities with similar programs, we've talked about these different cities that do this, they do it a little differently. A city outside of Sacramento, for instance, has been paying homeless people to pick up trash since last year, and every 2 weeks the city comes by, they pick up the trash bags, and then they hand out $20 gift cards. And those people can spend that on food or hygiene products at local grocery stores. Of course, cash can be spent anywhere. Let's talk about some vaccines. Let's count them, shall we? More than 1.56 million Oregonians have now gotten at least their first dose of the vaccine. The majority of those people have gotten their second dose as well. And that puts us at about 39% of the state's population with at least one shot. Then in Washington, they've officially hit the 3 million mark there. More than 3.11 million people have gotten at least their first dose, which works out to be almost 41% of that state's population. Now, we get a lot of questions about the J&J vaccine. People wanting to know about Johnson & Johnson after the rollout was paused while the CDC investigates rare cases of blood clots. Beverly asked us this. We have heard about the 6 women who have had blood clots with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and would like to know if birth control had anything to do with it, because back in the early days of birth control, blood clots was a problem. So we found out this. There are 2 different kinds of blood clots, and the ones associated with the vaccine have doctors more concerned. Certain types of birth control, they have been associated with blood clots called deep vein thrombosis. They develop in the legs and they can travel into the lungs, which is bad. And that happens to between 3 and 9 people out of every 10,000 each year, so less than 1/10%. But they can be treated with blood thinners. The types of blood clots noted in the Johnson & Johnson cases, they form in one of the veins that drain blood from your head down to your heart. They're extremely rare, but they significantly increase your risk of a stroke, and they can't be treated with blood thinners. The FDA says that there has been no link between birth control and this kind of blood clot. What we've learned in the past few months is that no matter what you say, no matter what you do, some people are just not going to get the coronavirus vaccine. It's not going to happen. Even though the science is undisputed, vaccines are the safest and most effective way to quickly end this pandemic. Now, I'm not a fortune teller, but I'm pretty sure once society ticks back to returning to normal, some places are only going to allow you inside if you're vaccinated. This is most notable around workplaces, and we have a couple of examples where it's kind of already happening. A winery in Eugene announced that all of their employees will need to have at least the first shot by May 20th. Seattle University just announced that students will need to be vaccinated before they can return to campus in the fall. We were talking about how that might be a possibility. And other schools are saying it could be the same there. They might have similar policies. Workplaces, they run the spectrum of saying things like, quote, we strongly encourage our employees to get the vaccine, to actually paying them extra to go and get the shot, like we saw Kroger do. But whether or not your boss can actually tell you that you have to get a shot or that you're going to get fired is something that has a lot of people debating right now. And a senator in Washington state says, no, you can't force somebody to get a vaccine. Senator Doug Erickson introduced a bill that he says would prevent discrimination based on a person's vaccine status. So work, school, travel, going out to eat, stuff like that, you wouldn't be required to be vaccinated under this Senate Bill 5144. Senator Erickson says it's about individual rights and freedom of choice. He wrote, nowhere is the coercive power of government more intrusive than on this issue. We don't require flu shots, and we shouldn't require COVID shots. Often people forget that our Constitution puts the rights of the individual first. We shouldn't trample on it in a rush to vaccinate. Now, the bill is still in committee, so it's a long way off from becoming law. As for now, the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission has said that employers can require workers to get vaccinated as a condition of employment, and that they can request proof that you've been vaccinated. Now, there are exemptions, and we've talked about those on the show, for health and religious reasons, but right now, Keep in mind also the vaccine doesn't even have the full FDA approval. They're still under the emergency use authorization. So a lot of things have to happen here. Here's another angle to consider. According to the Washington Post, it's legal to ask about and share vaccine status when hiring for a job. So a potential employer can pass you over for a new job if you're not vaccinated in favor of someone who is.
Aren't we supposed to be in April showers mode right now? Instead, it has been dry, really dry, and that's already causing big problems in southern Oregon.
A lot of worry that there won't be enough water to see the crops through the summer and into the fall.
When the story continues.
Touching on a lot of big issues tonight. We're getting a lot of emails, Facebook comments, things like that. Keep them coming. Use Twitter as well in that hashtag #HeyDan. We'll talk about some of that at the end of the show. I always address a couple of comments and feedback, things like that. So keep sending those to the story at kgw.com, or again, use that hashtag #HeyDan. So we always want to give context and perspective on this show. I think it's so important to truly understanding a story or understanding a community or a problem or anything really. Here's a great example. Wasn't it beautiful this weekend? Not a cloud in the sky, 80 degrees. I needed sunscreen in April. Yes, I need sunscreen at night in December, but you know what I mean. This stretch of nice weather has been exactly what a lot of us have needed after this COVID-y wet winter that requires vitamin D in pill form. And when I see a sunny 7-day, I think of Modelo's on the back porch. But then again, I'm not a farmer. Here's a recent headline from NBC News. Epic drought means water crisis on the Oregon-California border. The people near Klamath Falls are scrambling right now. The president of the Water Association said, "We all know what this is going to mean to our farms, our families, and our community as a whole. For some of us, it may mean we're not in business anymore next year." These are the families that grow the wheat and the potatoes that you eat and the things you buy in the grocery store and eat at the local restaurants. And we might not have enough water to do any of that. Some farms may actually decide not to even plant anything, that it's not even worth the risk, just leaving their land, their property, idle. Now, you may be sitting at home right now and saying, wait a minute, we're running out of water? Why did you wait until after the commercial break to tell us about this? Quick, fill up the Brita. No, your faucet won't start spitting dust. Yes, you can still water your lawn, but farms, they follow different rules. They apply for water. See, scientists, they look at a variety of different things like snowpack and rainfall and current water levels and forecasts, and then they factor in how much water like me and you and everybody else is going to drink and do the dishes with and flush the toilet and water the lawn and all that stuff, and then they decide how much water to offer our farmers. And this year, that number isn't enough. I interviewed Professor Larry O'Neill at OSU about this and asked him a question that had a predictable, simple, and frightening answer.
Why not just give them more? What's the risk, I guess, in just giving them more of the general supply of water?
Giving them more of the general supply of water. The risk is that you run out of water early before the next wet season, and then nobody gets water. And so that's one of the things that the water managers must, they worry about that quite often.
And right now they're worried because we're going through one of the driest Aprils on record. And perhaps you're saying, but maybe next month we'll have one of the wettest Mays on record and then we'll be all good, right? No, because that's not really how it works. Now, not that rain is a bad thing. We need rain. Give us a downpour. We'd like that. But think of it this way. You have a savings account with cash, right, for a rainy day. Well, Mother Nature has one for dry days, and she banks at Mount Hood Financial. A strong snowpack is vital to our water supply. See, it slowly distributes water to places that we know it's going to go, easy to then transport to the places that need it the most. A downpour can help, but not nearly as much as months of snowfall.
So actually, the decade between 2010 and 2020, so the last 10 years, we've been in droughts, at least some form of drought within Oregon in most of those years. And, currently it's unclear when, the current kind of drought cycle will break. Even though we've gone through periods of drought and things like that, the worry is that into the future, the water supply will become more strained, and those sort of decisions will become harder, especially as the population grows and, we become, we've become more sensitive to these disruptions.
Now, this specific disruption has aid coming in from the federal government. Now they've agreed to help the farmers with some money. The governor has said that this crisis has her attention. But money and attention can't really grow crops, not like water does. And that's what they want. They want water. Meanwhile, you may see some prices go up at the grocery store or find certain goods aren't as fresh because they've had to be shipped from further away. Now, it's been, 34 years since the debut of an American institution. I'm, of course, talking about The Simpsons. It's a show that first aired as a short on The Tracy Ullman Show on this day in 1987. And the rest, you, I guess, could say is history. Now, Oregon's always had a lot of history with this show. Creator Matt Groening is from Portland, and we've always been pretty sure that the Springfield on the show is the one based in here in Oregon. So sure, in fact, that we entered a contest over it in 2007. Here's what we found in the KGW Vault.
It would seem like a no-brainer. Simpsons creator Matt Groening is from Portland. His cartoon series is full of Portland names like Flanders, Lovejoy, and Quimby.
I'm Mayor Quimby, and
so why is Springfield, Oregon's mayor laying on the shtick?
The other Springfields are taking this series too. This is, they're looking at this as being a competition.
13 other Springfields across the United States are vying for the chance to host the world premiere of The Simpsons movie later this month. Each has posted a movie for voters online. Oregon's governor can't even believe it's a contest.
Who would ever think that Springfield, Massachusetts, or Springfield, Illinois, or Springfield, Missouri? He's never been there. Right. Homer Simpson lives here.
But Illinois has a pretty good case, too. One Simpsons episode features a return address from Illinois and depicts signals to outer space from Springfield, Illinois. Most of the time, though, Groening keeps the location vague.
Springfield, right here.
Dad, you're not pointing anywhere near Springfield.
When he traveled from Portland down to Hollywood, there's only one Springfield he went through. I mean, come on.
Oregon's Springfield mayor says a statue in the cartoon is modeled after a statue at the nearby U of O campus, and the cartoon bar is modeled after Max's downtown. The city has made its own real-life props, too, and enlisted the help of skateboarder Tony Hawk in its video pitch.
Which everyone knows is the true Springfield of The Simpsons.
Will it be enough? Voting ends next week.
Unfortunately, even Tony Hawk couldn't help us. Oregon's Springfield lost to Vermont's Springfield in that contest for the movie premiere location. But we did end up winning something bigger, I think, because in 2012, Groening finally admitted that Springfield, Oregon is the real basis for his show. Now, if you don't want to make the hour and 45-minute trip down I-5 to the real-life Simpsons hometown, you can check out some Simpsons landmarks in Portland. Travel Portland has a list of places to check out on their website. All right, if you have any suggestions for the vault, let me know. We love digging around in there. Use the hashtag #HeyDan. I'm going to read some of your comments when we finish the story next. All right, hey, a couple comments here. Jennifer wrote in and said, "Hey Dan, no qualms at all with paying homeless people to pick up trash. It's mostly their own after all, but calling it skilled work is absurd." Well, yeah, I don't know that I would call it skilled work, but there's some, I guess, coordinating that has to go along with it. But I get your point, but it's not really the point of the program, is it? Also, Karen writing in and saying, paying the houseless to pick up their own trash? So what they're saying is they're paying the houseless to pick up their own trash. Well, that's a kind of a strange way to look at it. So again, they're using nonprofits to then distribute money to people and coordinate some of these cleanup efforts. They're not necessarily taking them back to the camps where they stay or the places where they stay. And just because you're homeless doesn't necessarily mean you live in a tent. There are plenty of people who are homeless who aren't living in tents or living around certain areas that need to be cleaned up. Right? So we all produce trash. You wouldn't say that somebody who works for the city as a garbage collector, a garbage man, or a garbage worker is cleaning up after themselves, right? They're cleaning up after all of us. We all live here together. And then Sarah Thomas, when I said the rest is history about The Simpsons airing, she said, please never, ever say the rest is history. It's the dumbest cliche ever. What does it even mean? Sarah, I feel like that's a lot of aggression for that phrase, and I feel like there's more of a story there. So please share it with us. I want to know the root of this anger. Use hashtag #HeyDan. Man, it was Monday. Felt like a Monday. I'll be on my game tomorrow. Trust me, I'll see you then.